This is Joe again. We're here today to do a basic introduction of scales for you. What I'm going to show you is what I wished I would have learned when I started playing the guitar. I learned this after a few years into it, and it would have helped a lot to know these basics. I don't want to just teach you scale patterns. I want to teach you why you're playing the notes you're playing, so you know what scales fit with what keys, and you'll be super epic awesome. So let's get on with it right now. The first thing you need to know is that the distance on a guitar between two frets is called a whole step. So if I go from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret, that would be one whole step. If I go from the 3rd fret to the 4th fret, that's 1/2 step. So as you go up the neck of the guitar, the distance between 2 frets is a whole step. 1 fret is a 1/2 step. Okay, the most important thing that I need to show you next, and I want you to remember this, that between the notes in a scale, in a major scale, like between A and B, there is a whole step. Between C and D, there is a whole step. But between B and C and E and F, there is only a 1/2 step. All the other notes in the scale are a whole step. I wrote it down so you can remember it. It's a rule. There's a 1/2 step between B and C, and there's a 1/2 step between E and F. The rest of the notes are whole steps. To illustrate this, I'm going to teach you the notes on the E string of the guitar. The lowest string on the guitar is called an E string. That's this thick string here. If I play that open, that note is an E. If I go 1 fret and put my finger on the 1st fret, that would be an F, because there is only a 1/2 step between an E and an F. There's a whole step between an F and a G, so I would move 2 frets up. That's a G. There's a whole step between a G and an A. On the 5th fret here, that would be an A. There's a whole step between an A and a B. Here on the 7th fret would be a B. Then there is only a 1/2 step between a B and a C. That would be a C. And then if I go up another whole step, I have a D. And then if I go another whole step, I'm right back to an E. A real easy thing to remember is that when I play the string open and I play the string on the 12th fret, same note. It's just 1 octave higher. So that is the first rule I want you to remember, that there is a 1/2 step between B and C and a 1/2 step between E and F. The rest of the notes in between are either sharp or flat. They're the same thing. If you're going up the neck, you would call them sharps. If you're going down the neck, you'd call them flats. For example, that's an A note, this is a B note. If I'm going back down to A, this would be a B flat. It can also be called an A sharp. There's no right or wrong, but the in-between notes are sharps and flats. Now this is huge. This rule you have to know. The rule for a major scale is 2 whole steps and then 1/2 step. Then 3 whole steps and then 1/2 step. Now I want to illustrate this with notes. The C major scale is the easiest way to illustrate this because there are no sharps and flats. If I draw out a C major scale, it's going to look like this paper. C, the whole step, D, a whole step, E to F is a 1/2 step. So we have 2 whole steps and a 1/2 step. Then we have 3 whole steps. F to G is a whole step, G to A is a whole step, A to B is a whole step, and then B and C, that's a 1/2 step. To figure out the notes in any other scale, the only thing you have to do is write out the scale and use the formula: 2 whole steps, 1/2 step, 3 whole steps, 1/2 step. That's important, remember that. If I want to write out the G scale, I start with a G, I need 2 whole steps and a 1/2 step, 3 whole steps and a 1/2 step. So between G and A, there's a whole step. Between A and B, there's a whole step. Between B and C, there's a 1/2 step. I'm doing good so far. Between C and D, there's a whole step. Between D and E, there's a whole step. Now I need another whole step. Between E and F is only a half step. So it has to be an F sharp, because I have to move it up 1 fret so I have a whole step. Then, I hope you're catching on to this. Then between a F sharp and a G is only a half a step. I'll illustrate this one more time with an A scale. We need 2 whole steps, half a step, 3 whole steps, half a step. So I write out A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. And then I can go A and B, that's a whole step. Between B and C is only a half step, so it has to be a C sharp. Then I'm ready for my half step, so between C sharp and D is a half step. Between D and E is a whole step. E and F is a whole step. E and F is a half step, so I need an F sharp. Then I need another whole step, so between F sharp I have to go all the way up to a G sharp to get my other whole step. And then between G sharp and A is a half step. So I have 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, 1 half step. So now I know that A major scale has a C sharp, an F sharp, and a G sharp in it. Now I hope that wasn't too confusing. I want to clear things up by illustrating this rule on 1 string of the guitar. I'm going to go ahead and play a C major scale on only using the E string. So first I have to find my C to start with. There's my C, because I know that open it's an E, that's an F, a G, an A, a B, and there's only 1 step between B and C, so this must be a C. So my C major scale, I want to go 2 whole steps and then a half step. So I go C, D, E, F. So I went 2 whole steps and a half a step. Now I want 3 whole steps and a half a step. So I'm at F. I go G, A, B, and then a half a step to C. That was a C major scale, all played on the E string. I know that's confusing, but if you learn the rules that I just showed you, then you can be super epic awesome on the guitar. Next, we're going to show you scale patterns. We're going to show you major scales, minor scales, pentatonic scales, and I hope this is fun. If you want to make a comment, please comment and let us know how we can do better for you. If you want to see something in particular, let us know. But whatever you do, please subscribe, and you'll be that much closer to being super epic awesome. Thanks for watching today.